G'day everyone, it's Electronics. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how to create tension and release in your music composition. Whether you are writing a dramatic action scene, a chase scene, or you're just simply wanting to add some emotional intensity into your music, understanding how to create tension and release is going to be very important. So today I'll be breaking down some of the layers in the short film Caminando's Amigos, the one that I recorded at Trackdown Studios. And I'm going to be sharing some of the techniques that I use to create tension and release and keep you on the edge of your seat. So let's dive in. All right, so first of all, let's have a look at the scene that I'm going to be breaking down. All right, so that was a train scene from the short film Caminando's Amigos. And as you can see, there was a lot going on. It was quite fast paced. There was this impending danger and urgency of whether or not the llama was going to make it in time to save the penguin from the train. So I really wanted the music to reflect all of that and really build up and create some intense tension. So let's check out some of the layers on how I did that. Okay, so the first technique that I used to create tension in this scene was through the use of repetition. And I did that in the string section through the use of ostinatos. So if we have a listen to the string section. Okay, so that was like basically the main, I guess, foundation of this scene were these ostinatos, which was really driving the music and I guess giving it that sense of urgency and danger. Okay, so now that you've heard the overall string section, let's take a look at the individual layers in the string section so you know what each individual instrument is playing. So we have this bass line, which is playing an F to an E, which is, that famous minor 2 interval. So it sounds like this. Okay, so we have basically the bass line playing a pedal point note on the F down to the E. So it's also giving it that dissonance from the E to the F because that's a semitone, that's a minor 2 interval. And this is a really common, I guess, interval that you can use when you're wanting to create tension is that famous minor 2 interval that was made popular by the Jaws theme. So basically, it definitely has that kind of Jaws vibes feeling. And what I've done is I've given it an accent on every second note. So it kind of has this approaching kind of marching feel going on. This kind of suspense of creeping towards something. So that's what I had the bass instrument play. And in the actual recording, the cello played that line. Then we have the cello also playing this part. So if you see my full uncut process, you would have seen how I created these ostinatos. But basically, these ostinatos are really playing like an F major chord, and I've added in the C sharp to give it that dissonance. Again, that minor 2 interval. So that's what the cello was playing. Okay, so next up we have violins 2 playing this part. And then we also have the violins 1 playing this part. And that's just to really kind of accent those minor 2 intervals. I wanted the violins to play the notes in a harmony to the original F major chord that I was playing. So basically had the violins 1 and 2 playing the 7, 9, 11, and then the minor 2 interval from the B to the C. And basically that was just to really give it some color by changing up some of the notes in that chord, and also really to accent that minor 2 interval in a high register with these instruments. Okay, so the next layer that I have in this string section that we're playing the ostinatos was the soaring high strings. And they sounded like this. Again, just to add emphasis and accent on that minor 2 interval. So other layers that I had in the string section included some long sustained notes. And this is another technique that you can use to create tension in your composition. So we have this string ensemble playing these long sustained notes. Again, in the minor 2 interval, keeping within the key that I'm working in terms of this F major chord. So I'm really, really emphasizing this minor 2 interval in this scene. And the minor 2 interval is a very common interval to use in scenes like this when you want to create suspense and you want to create this kind of creeping feeling. But my advice would be to just make sure you make it your own and play it in a way that is different to, the original way that it was made famous in the film Jaws. Okay, so I just noticed that I also used the piccolo to layer up those ostinatos. So if we just have a listen to it quickly, the piccolo is still playing the notes in the F chord. So let's have a listen. And again, that was just to add some texture and variation to the strings and give it a different timbre so that those minor 2 intervals would really stick out. So basically I've shown you the ostinatos, which created that repetition and helped to create that tension. Within those ostinatos, I use a technique of dissonance, adding in the minor 2 interval. But there are different ways that you can create dissonance. Maybe you might want to change keys. Maybe you want to go out of key. Maybe you want to add in some riser effects or different layers and sustained notes in a different key to give it that dissonance. So there's many different ways that you can create dissonance to add tension to your composition. But for me, I use the minor 2 interval and I varied how I use that interval. I also use different notes in a F chord going all the way up to F, major 11 and things like that. So that was what I did. So looking at some other layers in this scene, we have a bassoon effect, which sounds like this. So it kind of sounds like a train horn, which is why I used it, but it also has quite a dissonant sound to it. What were some of the other layers that I used? So we also have in the brass section, I used the brass ensemble to create some really long sustained notes in that low end to I guess create a kind of like dark, dangerous feeling to it. So it sounds like this. And I'll just unfreeze that. So we've basically got an F chord playing the root note and the fifth note of the chord down to that minor 2 interval on the B note. So it's giving it that kind of like suspended kind of like feel to it. So we've got the F note here with a C down to a B. So that's also going to add that kind of like dissonance. So let's hear what it sounds like. So it's almost like a signal of danger, like signaling to the llama, danger is coming. And then we have some more brass ensemble with a pedal point on the B note. So again, adding in that dissonance. Okay, so that was all that we had in the brass section. Let's just close that up. Close up the woodwinds. Okay, so the other technique that I used to create tension in this train scene was through the use of rhythms. So the instruments that I had chosen to play the rhythms was this Cuba Rhythms instrument, which sounds like this. And then we also have like your standard kind of like action strikes or taiko drums, which sounds like this. Okay, so if you want to know the instruments that I use to create tension in this scene, you can check out my full uncut process. But basically, a lot of these instruments came from the complete 14 series by Native Instruments. And they were really the main 2 layers that I created in this composition to create that tension. Was just the Cuba rhythms to keep in line with, I guess, the overall soundscape of the composition, because I chose a lot of like South American instruments in this composition. And obviously I used this action ensemble to create this driving percussion loop to really add some tension to this scene. So that brings me to the final, I guess, technique that I use to create tension in this, and this is to add extra layers. So once I created the foundation with the harmonic and rhythmic layers using the ostinatos and these driving kind of like percussion loops, I then went in and added some extra layers to really emphasize and bring out the urgency of this train scene, to really amp up the tension. And I used the choir because this was one of the sounds of the penguin. Every time the penguin has the berry, you hear the choir. That's why I added in the choir, and we have the choir singing these kind of like really high pitched like stabs. So let's have a listen. So the penguin's right there with the berry, and we're going to go an octave higher. As the penguin has a berry. And then again, when the penguin has the berry. So we have the choir in a way giving off these signals like to the penguin. You're in danger. Like, what are you doing? Get out of the way. So yeah, added in these extra layers of the choir just to give it that extra kind of like tension and to give it that sense of like danger and urgency. And as I said, there were other layers that I added in, which I already have gone over, like the bassoon effect. We have some sustained long strings in the string section as well. And then obviously there's that moment when the llama does the somersault. To give it that release, there's basically silence. And this is a really like easy way to give your composition a sense of release, is just to add some silence after a really tense dramatic moment. But there's other ways to also provide release, but in this instance I just chose to basically have the drums accent the somersault of the llama to complete silence. So if we have a listen to that. And there it is, like silence, which is all that you need to have that kind of like release happen after a big kind of like build up moment. So to sum up, creating tension and release in your music comes down to balancing basically harmony, rhythm, layers, and silence in your composition. According to Masterclass, some of the ways that you can create tension and release include repetition. So repeating the same bundle of chords or notes creates rhythmic tension by establishing a predictable pattern and putting emphasis on these sounds. Number 2, creating dissonance. So creating harmonic tension by putting two notes together that feel unstable and uneasy, like a middle C and its neighboring semitone C sharp. Another way that you can create some tension is through key changes. So when a song shifts between keys, it creates anticipation to return to its resolutive tone, the original tonic chord. Adding minor keys or moving out of the familiar note zone can also contribute to musical tension. Number 4, dynamics. Music that increases in pitch or loudness builds towards a climax for the listener. So slowly having a crescendo from quiet to loud can create a lot of tension. So essentially each technique and element plays a crucial role in creating that uneasy feeling in your audience and keeping them engaged. Each technique is designed to create suspense and build tension so that your audience questions, are they going to make it? What is going to happen? It keeps them on the edge of their seat, like I said. So I hope this breakdown gives you some useful insights and tips on how you can create tension and release in your composition. If you want to check out my full uncut process of how I created this score in Ableton, you can check out the video up here, or you can head to the link in the description. I've created a whole series of videos on how I created this score in Ableton, so you can check out that playlist as well. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.